Hi, Shannon Austin here with another update from Public Works. On today's show, we're going to spend a little time on Veterans Parkway. We're going to give you an update on the progress of the construction project on the north end, and then we're going to take a little bit more of an in-depth look of Veterans Parkway on the southern end. And then lastly, we're going to travel out to the water reclamation plant and answer every question you have about biosolids. Should be exciting. Stay tuned. Well, we're up in the northeast part of the city, back on my favorite project, Veterans Parkway. Harry's becoming pretty common on our show. So what has happened since the last time? We were out here about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they were just starting to do the bridge. How is the status? What is the status of the bridge?
Well, the status of the bridge is all concrete is in place on top of the girders.
Wonderful.
As far as the decking goes.
Okay.
There is still the concrete barriers that remain to be poured, and they're doing sections of those each day. As time allows, weather allows, they're getting as much done as they can.
So that's like the sides of...
Correct. The sides that you see, the northbound structure has 3 barriers on it. The southbound has 2, and the northbound has 3 because of the bike path that's on the east side. Oh,
is that 8 or 10 feet wide?
I think it's an 8 foot.
Okay,
yeah.
So that's good. So that's a wonderful feature along the entire Veterans Parkway, is to have that side path.
Yes.
Okay, so then walk us through what's going to happen then next year. I mean, we'll still see a contractor out after it's open, right?
Yes, we'll have a lot of cleanup work to do. The bridge that we're currently standing on will actually get removed, so this one won't be here when we're done with the project.
This one, okay.
Correct. And so the contractor, if the weather allows this fall, will also come in and remove a lot of the dirt that's underneath of the bridges, and that's supposed to be removed in order to define the channel.
Can people be up on the bridge? I mean, I assume that they're working and...
Correct. Currently they're still working. It's still a closed construction site.
Okay.
You can see it from the interstate side, and you can actually see it from Rice Street too.
Good.
So you can actually definitely see it as a large bridge. It's quite neat to look at when you're out on the deck. It's a long ways over the water.
Oh yeah, excellent. Well, the anticipation is mounting.
Definitely.
Thanks so much for your time.
Yes, thank you.
So today we're going to talk about the top 3 questions we've been getting about the southern segment of Veterans Parkway. What is it? Where is it? And when will it happen? And we're going to start with what is it? And I think it's better to discuss what it is not. It is not Interstate 229. It does not have 300 plus feet of right-of-way. It does not have 65 miles per hour, 70 miles per hour speed limit. It does not have interchanges. It's not a bypass. So it's not an interstate system. And then driving down a little bit closer to home, it's not going to be 41st Street, like for instance by Louise Avenue. It's not going to have a speed limit of 30 to 35 mile an hour. It's not going to have access points every couple hundred feet. It's not going to have sidewalks on the back of the curb, which makes it really tough for pedestrians and sidewalk and bicyclists to travel along the corridor. It's just not going to have that much stuff going on along the corridor. So Veterans Parkway is a regional arterial system. And arterials, it's going to carry, anywhere from that 25 to 35,000 vehicles per day. And an arterial, that's going to be 6 lanes wide. It's going to have a nice wide median to allow for turning movements at the intersections, the arterial intersections. The speed limit along Veterans Parkway is going to typically be posted at 50 to 55 because we don't need another 41st Street. We need an arterial that's going to carry traffic around the city of Sioux Falls. We will have limited access. Access will be at the mile segments, which would be like Minnesota, Sycamore, Cliff. Those are mile-long segments. And in the areas that are more commercialized, like for instance, along Veterans Parkway from 26th Street up to Arrowhead Parkway, where it's already constructed, it's more commercialized. Access points will be every half mile. But on that southern segment, typically the access points are every mile. We will have signals at every one of those arterial intersections. And then another great feature along that southern segment will be very similar to the northern segment, where we have the separated side path that is for bikes and peds, that 10-foot side path. And if you drive along Veterans Parkway now between 57th Street all the way up to Rice Street, you'll see that side path and you will see that being used. So that's what Veterans Parkway really is. I mean, if you really wanted to just go out there and see it, Great portions or great examples are between 49th Street and 26th Street for that residential feel. There's twin homes and apartments on one side, there's single family homes on the other. And then once you get north of 26th Street, it's more of that commercialized area. Again, with some residential development on the east side of the street. So if you're wanting to know what your Veterans Parkway looks like, it's already constructed on that northern segment, and that's what that southern segment will look like. So the next question is, where will it be? Where will it be it's going to be a little bit harder to describe because a lot of it currently is in farm fields and areas that aren't really necessarily identified with an actual street corridor. So we start on or at the intersection of 57th Street and Veterans Parkway. Now today, 57th Street and Veterans Parkway is basically an interim intersection. On the west side of the intersection is fully built out. On the east side, on 57th Street, is a gravel road. And then Highway 11 to the north is an interim section of the full build out. And then south, we kind of transition down to a DOT highway. So our projects will start at 57th Street. We will improve that intersection. We will make it a full urban section, which means the east side of 57th Street is going to look like the west side of 57th Street. That intersection area will actually be a commercialized area. It'll have a lot more commercialized feel over the next 5 to 10 years. As we continue to go wrap around and deviate off of the Highway 11 corridor, you can see Frankman's on the left-hand side of the screen, and then you'll see big bodies of water. We have regional detention ponds along the corridor to store water as well, stormwater, as well as provide some water quality. Now, through this entire corridor down here, it's wet, so we need to make sure that we store the water and make sure that we don't impact neighbors downstream. As we continue to the west, now we're traveling west off of 57th Street, and we're heading over to basically 69th Street, which is a gravel road. Now, 69th Street, as well as the existing portion of Highway 11, will be realigned to form a four-legged intersection. Now, this is the area that probably will look the most different, because as we're veering off of the original Highway 11 alignment, we have to make sure that we provide a safe and four-legged 90-degree intersection. 69th Street will veer off to the south, Highway 11 will veer off to the north, and we will create a four-legged intersection. Now, the existing Highway 11 alignment as it goes north outside of Veterans Parkway intersection will just basically get downgraded into a normal arterial street. As we continue to the west, we approach Sycamore Avenue. Now, there's an existing electrical substation right there at Sycamore Avenue. The corridor is to the south of the substation, and as we travel through this area, it's basically farm fields. So you'll see that the corridor right-of-way has not yet been acquired, and that'll be certainly the Department of Transportation and the City of Sioux Falls' first steps in 2021 is start to acquiring right-of-way. Now, there's quite a bit of development north with Harrisburg Elementary Schools in the area, but Sycamore Avenue right now is a gravel road, and when Veterans Parkway goes through, this particular portion of Sycamore will continue to be an asphalt rural section, which means it won't have curb and gutter, but it'll have asphalt to get down to the corridor. As we continue to the west, you'll see a lot of rooftops on the right-hand side of the screen. That is, strictly due to the growth of Sioux Falls and the growth that elementary and middle schools bring. And so the corridor basically goes right to the south of all of those rooftops. And then our next intersection is Sycamore Avenue. Now, or Southeastern Avenue. So Southeastern is a little bit different than Sycamore. To the north, it's an urban section. It's a 4-lane median section. We will carry that urban section, that 4 lanes with a median, through the Veterans Parkway intersection, and then transition down to a 2-lane asphalt and eventually a gravel 2-lane road like it is today. We just don't have the funds to bring all of the pavement along, these arterial streets all the way down to Highway 106 yet, because these are still outside of city limits. So we just want to make sure that people can get to the corridor, as best they can on a gravel and or paved surface. So as we continue to the west, our first overpass and our only Burlington Northern overpass is coming up and right adjacent to the University of Sioux Falls and Sioux Falls Christian campus. And we also have a large complex of apartments that is developing right at 77th Street there. So 77th Street certainly has a hub of residential homes, apartments, and also has some commercial development right to the south of the corridor. This portion of Veterans Parkway right at Cliff Avenue, we just built Cliff Avenue a few years ago. We will break the median and we will create the intersection to be a full urbanized intersection, much like we just did at Southeastern Avenue, and then we will bring that urban section down to 85th Street. So this portion of Veterans Parkway to the west of Cliff Avenue, we actually have acquired the right-of-way in advance of the corridor being constructed. And you can see right, as we drive through, that there is that 200-foot corridor, and a lot of folks have been concerned that it's not wide enough. It doesn't look like it's wide enough to put Veterans Parkway through there, but there is 200 feet there to build the 6 lanes with the median and the side paths. So you'll see some wetlands, you'll see some detention ponds. Those will still remain, and we'll have to address any wetlands that we are impacting according to the federal guidelines. And you'll see rooftops both on the north and the south side of the corridor. Now on the south side, you'll see that there has been some screening done with trees and berming. On the north side, the developer has created nice deep backyards to allow for further distance from the backyard to the corridor. And as we continue around the corner, there is some homes that are a little bit closer, but we will address the impacts of the corridor, and we will try to make that corridor fit better with the neighborhoods. Now, again, I would encourage folks to take a look at the section of the existing Veterans Parkway between 41st Street and 49th Street, because that's where we have done a little bit of a berm to allow for a visual obstruction of actually seeing the corridor. As we continue on the corner to 85th Street, this is our second overpass, and this is where Veterans Parkway starts to go up and over 85th Street. Now you ask, well, why are we going over 85th Street? Well, we are just too close for the number of cars that we would have at 85th Street for an intersection too close to Minnesota Avenue, because Minnesota Avenue is a very large intersection, and 85th Street and Veterans just typically wouldn't work with traffic. So we're going over 85th Street, and then we are continuing in the rural section and rural farmland behind the commercial development that currently exists. Now, as we come up on Minnesota Avenue there, Minnesota 115, the Department of Transportation recently widened that in the summer of 2020, and it's been a welcome addition to the regional traffic needs of the area. Our Veterans Parkway comes through and again breaks the median and creates an intersection right there. It's actually very near the landscape business that is there. In fact, we do have some impacts on that landscape development, so we'll have to work through those issues during our final design. This area, of course, has the Walmart on the right-hand side at 85th and Minnesota, and then also has some commercialized area to the north of 85th Street. So once we cross Minnesota Avenue or Highway 115, then again we're back in the farmland area, crossing areas that are outside of the city of Sioux Falls city limits, but they are actually in our 2045 growth area. So that's important to remember, because I'll talk about that in a little bit. So we continue to go to the west and we come upon Western Avenue. Western Avenue, again, is a great example of how schools prompt development. We have a Harrisburg Middle School as well as a Harrisburg Elementary School. And just look at all the rooftops that are up there adjacent to that neighborhood. Our corridor comes through right to the south of Harrisburg schools, and we basically go adjacent to their property lines. And again, here we will improve Western Avenue from 95th or 93rd Street down to the corridor, and then again transition back into the 2-lane rural section. or it could be an urban section. We just don't have those details worked out yet, but we are exploring a roundabout at 95th and Western. As we continue to the west, we again come up on Louise, which, going through farmland, and just right over there to the north is residential homes. And that's so important, again, to keep in mind, because the residential homes are close and we'll be able to utilize Veterans Parkway once we get it constructed. As we come upon Louise Avenue is an urban section down to 95th Street, and then it transitions down to a 2-lane county road, and then at Highway 106 and Louise, there's a roundabout. Lincoln County recently constructed a roundabout. And so our portion of Veterans Parkway will construct Louise all the way down to the roundabout as a full 4-lane urban section. And then we'll have a large Veterans Parkway intersection. And then when you're traveling on 106, instead of going to the west to Interstate 29, you'll just go through the roundabout and go north for a quick jog to get back on Veterans Parkway to get to the interstate, because Highway 106 won't necessarily intersect directly with the interchange as it does today. So as we continue to travel cross country on farmland, we will eventually get back on to the original 106 alignment, and that's going to be probably about 3/4 of a mile from the interchange. And then we just widen back out to that 6-lane facility on Highway 106, and Highway 106 becomes the last segment of Veterans Parkway. And we have such a cluster of, not really residential, but more commercial, industrial. We do have, this area is in our growth area. We have tall grass, that's a gravel road. So it's really through this last segment, it's going to be mostly challenging because we have to make sure that the corridor fits well, again, with the commercial area. And then once we get to Interstate 29, that is the ending location of our Veterans Parkway. So in a nutshell, that is the alignment of Veterans Parkway. So our third and final question is, when will this happen? Well, to take you, when will it happen, I have to bring you back to the early days, back in the 90s, when we actually started looking at what type of a transportation system the city of Sioux Falls needed to meet the needs of the future. And now keep in mind, the 1990s, our future was 2020, 2025, because that was our 20 to 25-year planning horizon. So we studied another interstate system, a 629, I think we called it. We didn't need that. We didn't need a bypass, but we needed a network of an arterial system to move traffic around the city and basically parallel in its Interstate 229. And if you look at other communities, they plan transportation very, very similarly to this approach. So in 2003, we settled on a final alignment, and we had looked at that so many different alignments between 1993 and 2003. We looked at, just using 6 Mile Road. We looked at going on Highway 11 down to 106. And none of these really worked out when we modeled it in traffic. Because when you build these arterial corridors, you want people to be able to use them. And so you want these arterial corridors to be in your growth area. Our southern boundary for our growth area, the city of Sioux Falls' growth area, is 106. And so if we built 106, widened 106, we wouldn't necessarily get a lot of Sioux Falls residents to use it, much less we wouldn't get a lot of, Harrisburg and T to use either, because we want to be able to make sure that it's surrounded by rooftops and surrounded by commercial development. So in 2003, we adopted the alignment that we're currently working off of. And when I say adopted, the South Dakota Highway Commission adopted the alignment, Federal Highway adopted the alignment, and the Sioux Falls Region Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is comprised of Sioux Falls, Brandon, Harrisburg, T, Hartford, Crooks, both linking to Minnehaha County, and the DOT and Federal Highway. So all of these bodies came together back in 2003 and said, hey, this is the alignment that will serve the need for the entire Sioux Falls region for 20 to 25 years to come. And so interestingly enough, in 2003, in the approved environmental assessment, it recommended that we have this corridor constructed by 2025. And so that's really interesting because we are actually moving forward to construct it in the next 5 years. And so we really knew what we were doing, I think, back in the 90s. It was good planning. So for construction, it's important to know that this 7-mile segment will be split up in multiple different segments. You know, right now we have it as a segment of Interstate 29 to Western, Western to Cliff, Cliff to Sycamore, and then Sycamore to 57th Street. Now, the actual timing of those construction projects is really unknown at this time. We will determine those over the next couple of years. However, we do want to start construction in 2023. So from our standpoint, you know, we're going to be really busy in the next couple of years. We're going to be setting up a project website specifically for South Veterans Parkway in January of 2021. We will plan on many public meetings, and some of those public meetings, depending on the situation, may be virtual public meetings, but there'll still be ample opportunity for the public to give us input and to understand, you know, from both sides, the public side as well as the government side, you know, how we make a good corridor that's going to fit in the neighborhood. We plan to start construction in 2023, and we hope to have construction completed by 2026 for drivers to travel on it by 2027. So, and again, depending on which segment is ready to go first, that will be the first segment that we construct. So it's really important for, you know, the public to be involved. We certainly want to hear the impacts or their you know, opinions and concerns. We do have to update our environmental assessment. For those of you that don't know much about environmental assessments, we will look at wetland impacts. We will look at endangered species. You know, we have our northern long-eared bat. If there's any, you know, lined snakes like what we had on the northern segment of Veterans Parkway, which there aren't any in this area, but just in case. We look at cultural impacts. We look at social impacts. I mean, these are all things that as part of the environmental assessment we will update because, again, we have an approved environmental assessment and an approved alignment, but we have to update it before we start construction. So we have a lot of work to do, and we certainly hope the public is willing to work with us and get to a final product that we all can be proud of in the upcoming years for generations to come.
All right, Sioux Falls, we're going to take a little bit of a pivot and go over to the water reclamation plan. We welcome to the show Phil. Phil, first and foremost, water reclamation and water purification. What is the difference between both of those, and where are we today?
So we are at the sledge holding lagoons out at the water reclamation facility. We take all of the water that goes down the drains throughout the city and we turn it back into clean water, and then we discharge it into the Big Sioux River. Water purification is the facility over by the airport. They bring the water up out of the aquifer or from the Lewis and Clark water system. They polish it up, they add the chlorine, the fluoride, you know, any of the additional stuff that we need to put in, and that's what goes to your taps and your showers and all the other clean water uses.
All right, so both facilities are essential to our quality of life.
Absolutely.
All right, so behind us, we have a very unique process.
Yep.
And I believe it's called the biosolids process.
Yes.
So just where do we start with what are biosolids?
So biosolids are a byproduct of the treatment of the dirty water.
Okay.
Wastewater treatment in general is kind of like farming. We grow specific forms of bacteria that consume all of the bad things that are in the water. You know, we all know what goes down the toilet. It's never a fun thing to talk about. But the bacteria we grow consume that and then leave clean water as their part of their byproduct. Once those bacteria get fat and happy and get to the end of their life cycle, we have to dispose of them in a proper way. We send them out here to one of our 2 holding lagoons, and then my team of 3 men goes out and applies this product to area farm fields as a fertilizer product.
So it's essentially then a solid as a fertilizer.
It is,
Okay.
yes.
So how long of a process is that from, let's just say when you flush it, how long of a process before it actually gets put back out on the ground as fertilizer?
Dependent on the time of year, it can be anywhere from about 36 hours up to about 6 months.
Okay.
Start to finish through the plant is anywhere from 18 to 24 hours. Once it goes out into our holding lagoons, if we're currently land applying, it can be taken out that same day.
Okay.
We get into the winter season, we'll have to hold it over winter because the ground gets too hard and conditions change.
So are you applying this biosolids then on farmland throughout the entire summer months?
We try to. If we have access to small grain fields, oats, wheat, anything along those lines that get harvested in July and August, we'll get out there. Hay ground is another area that we can go to. We're dependent on the farmers to let us know when they harvest their hay. We try and get out there as quick as we can after they harvest.
So do we apply it, or do the farmers with their tractors come in with their manure spreaders and do all of that work?
We're 100% full service.
Okay.
We have a permit through the state, basically our set of rules that we have to follow, and we found over time that it's better for us to just take complete ownership, start to finish. Not saying anybody did anything wrong intentionally, but we've had a couple of hiccups over time. And
Sure. So do we pay the farmers to put it on their property?
No. The only thing we do is we sign an agreement with them that as long as we do modern farming practices,
Sure.
we're not responsible for any damages. That said, if we've got a truck that turns too short and takes out a fence post, we'll go fix it.
Sure.
But there's no money that changes hands.
Well, what a unique process. So
Oh, yeah.
how long has the water rec plant been doing this?
This process that we currently are doing started in 1995.
Okay.
Prior to that, we were we squeezed the water out of it and just took it to the sanitary landfill and paid to dispose of it. As the city grew, it got to be too expensive to just pay to bury it.
Sure.
So we decided to go with some beneficial reuse at the time.
And very environmentally friendly then.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. So, of course, we've all heard in the media, as well as from Public Works Administration, that we have a new water upgrades to our new water reclamation plant. Will this process continue to occur then with the expansion?
So the process will continue, but we're going to change our approach. Right now we're doing a liquid process, and we're going to go to a semi-solid form. We'll eventually convert over to this 100%. It is part of the project, and we're hoping to have the final facility up and running in 2023, 2024.
Well, how exciting. I mean,
yeah.
a process that has been a little slower maybe, and
Yep.
now it's going to be sped up and a lot more efficient.
Yeah, we can, with this semi-solid product that we're putting out, we cut our application time in half, if not 2/3.
Awesome. Wow. Well, what else am I missing? Is there anything else you'd like to tell our viewers about this interesting but highly not known about process?
It's just a pretty good product that we can put out as a farm fertilizer. Saves the farmer a little bit of money, saves the city a lot of money because we don't have to pay to get rid of it. And if anybody wants to join up in the program, they're more than welcome to give me a call. We'll get the process started. It does take a little bit of time to get everything approved.
Sure.
But I'll let you know as soon as I know whether you're good to go or not.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
And Sioux Falls, you heard it here first. Certainly contact Phil's group if you're interested in this program.
Well, that's a wrap for today's show. Our next show will be a construction 2020 wrap-up, and then look for a project website in January of 2021 for Veterans Parkway. See you on the streets.